diversity in the ranks of pilots, which is extremely controversial for obvious reasons. Here's the clip that you were reacting to in South 13.
How is diversity and diversity targets working into the Aviation Academy?
We have committed that 50% of the class of the classes will be women or people of color. Today, only 19% of our pilots at United Airlines are women or people of color. And by the way, from all the data I've seen, that's the highest of any airline in the country. One of the things we do is for every job, when we do an interview, we require women and people of color to be involved in the interview process.
You want to go thought crime? I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has created.
The meltdown after this with people like,
Yes, and I want to just reiterate the essence of that clip that was missed by almost everybody, which is what I was trying to be, very vulnerable with the audience, is that DEI invites unwholesome thinking. And I said, and I was saying in the clip, that's not who I am. That's not what I believe. But what it does is it makes us worse versions of ourselves, Megan. That's the whole point of what I was saying, is that I now look at everything through a hyper-racialized diversity quota lens because of their massive insistence to try to hit these ridiculous racial hiring quotas. Of course, I believe anybody of any skin color can become a qualified pilot. That has never been my contention. I mean, it's silly. It's bigoted to think otherwise.
So there's two issues here when it comes to DEI, one of which I think goes largely ignored, and I think this is what Charlie Kirk was tapping into. Let's go with the first one, which should be the first obvious issue here. Right? Unfortunately, it's not obvious for a lot of people. In a job like being an air pilot, your skin color or your gender should not be a factor. They have nothing to do with your ability to fly a plane. You see, we have been trained to assume that bias or discrimination is at play when we don't see a certain number of Black people or women or whatever other minority group in a particular industry or company. But do you ever stop to think about how many people from that underrepresented group applied for the job or even have interest in that job or in that industry? Here's a truth that many people are going to find uncomfortable. The underrepresentation of Black people in white-collar jobs in certain companies has more to do with the population size of Black people, culture, and upbringing. Here's an example. My parents are from Jamaica. And actually, this is not just a Jamaican thing. It's actually a Caribbean thing, okay? One of the cultural norms is to tell women to go to school and become a nurse. We are pushed into the nursing field. So if you go in any area that has a high Caribbean population and you go into a hospital, many of those nurses will be from the Caribbean. That is a cultural thing. Many Nigerians, at least many of the Nigerians that I've met, will tell you their parents tell them you're going to be a doctor or an engineer. I make those references to point out the fact that our career path has much more to do with culture and upbringing and, again, population size than it has to do with bias. And the fact that we assume bias has more to do with propaganda and social engineering than with truth. Another harsh truth is, why do we assume bias when it comes to Black people being underrepresented in certain high-level positions, when the education system and when culture has been indoctrinating us that we're oppressed? So if you have been trained to think that the system is already against you no matter what, you're not going to be picked because of your skin color, people don't like you because of your skin color, if that is your vantage point, how many Black people have stopped themselves from striving for those types of positions? How far do you think a people group that already believe that they are defeated are going to reach? We clearly see the evidence and the fruit of telling Black people that they are oppressed and that the system is against them, when we begin to have conversations like the wealth gap, we're basically expecting a group of people who have been grossly and intentionally miseducated and who also have strayed from putting their trust in God and decided to put their trust in government to somehow be as prosperous as every other group of people. You see, that can only be done through policy and social engineering, basically government intervention. And that's what DEI is, which leads us back to one of my first statements in this video, which is that there is a second issue with DEI that Charlie Kirk touched on. He was brave enough to say it and, of course, received backlash from it. And if you heard him in context, without approaching what he said with an automatic bias or disdain for him, then you understood that he was saying this type of social engineering, this type of intervention and maneuvering that is unnatural and dangerous, worsens human relationships. It makes us worse versions of ourselves because we think things that we shouldn't think. We make assumptions about people and positions that we should never be in a position to have to think. And if most of us are honest and reflect with discernment, then we can recognize how the things that we've seen, whether it be on television or social media, the things that we've heard have caused us to assume things about other groups of people.